Ah yes, Metroid, a series that I've loved, but sadly a series that has felt unloved by the company who owns the property. A series that can practically be a game design lesson in and of itself, inventing a new genre out of the style of gameplay found in Metroid games. The genre is called Metroidvania, a combination of the games Metroid and Castlevania respectively. We've seen the slow but sure snowball effect of Metroidvania style games coming out with high praise in recent years. Hollow Knight, Axiom Verge, the Ori and the Blind Forest series, Dead Cells, one of the genre's most defining factors being backtracking. But backtracking is not what MercurySteam did when developing Metroid Dread. It feels like a step in the right direction. Metroid Samus Returns was released on the 3DS on September 17th in 2017, a game developed by MercurySteam and Nintendo Entertainment Planning and Development, otherwise known as Nintendo EPD. A development team responsible for the games such as Star Fox Zero, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, ARMS, Animal Crossing New Horizons, Splatoon 2, and a lot more of their modern ports to mobile devices. Metroid Samus Returns was a complete remake and modernization of Metroid 2 Return of Samus. MercurySteam head Enrique Alvarez described their collaboration with Nintendo as an incredible achievement, and Sakamoto, the director and creator of Metroid, in return stated that the studio was the best choice for a Metroidvania game given their good design sensibility and respect for the Metroid series. Sakamoto had expressed interest in making a new 2D Metroid game, which had not been done since Metroid Zero Mission in 2004, for a few years before the game's development started in 2015. After hearing that MercurySteam, following their involvement with Castlevania Lords of Shadow Mirror of Fate in 2013, were interested in taking on the challenge of remaking a Metroid game, he visited their studio to organize a collaboration. MercurySteam specifically pitched Nintendo a remake of Metroid Fusion, but Sakamoto instead wanted to recreate Metroid 2. Although Sakamoto had never worked on the original Game Boy game, he believed it to be an important entry in the Metroid series, particularly regarding its plot point of Samus encountering the last Metroid, and so he was enthusiastic about remaking it. The Nintendo 3DS was Sakamoto's platform of choice to employ the 3D visuals and dual-screen setup offered by the portable system. Sakamoto noted that the potential for 2D games in the Metroid franchise had opened up for Nintendo following the announcement of the game. He expressed that he was keen to evolve some of the traditions in a 2D Metroid game. As a remake, he wanted to preserve some of the originality and to avoid changing things without good reason. Their approach was to add to aspects which improved upon the game's core concepts of hunting the Metroid. Sakamoto hopes to start from the original game's simple and straightforward progression and spice up and excite the experience, offering new gameplay features and areas to explore such as the Aeon abilities. These ideas led to some changes to mechanics, such as the addition of free aiming for more precise firing. The idea of a melee counterattack came from MercurySteam, who had implemented a similar parry mechanic in their Castlevania game. Sakamoto felt that the inclusion of the melee counterattack offered players an alternative combat style, in contrast to previous games where players had to rely on dodging charge attacks from enemies and then defeating them from afar. Needless to say, Metroid Samus Returns performed incredibly well by fans and critics alike, garnering a 9 out of 10 from Polygon, an 8.5 out of 10 from IGN, and an 85% from Metacritic. Developed by MercurySteam and Nintendo EPD, Metroid Dread released on October 8, 2021. This game has taken what was introduced from Metroid Samus Returns and goes beyond what I feel anyone could have expected. I personally feel that Dread takes the best moments of Metroid Fusion and Super Metroid. I can only imagine being the studio who is incredibly grateful, as it is, for the opportunity to remake Metroid 2, but now helping with developing the next installment in Metroid 5, Metroid Dread? That's like crazy to me. In an interview with Polygon, series producer Yoshio Sakamoto talks a bit in depth about the creation of Metroid Dread. As for what inspired Dread's robot enemies, Sakamoto told reporters on a Zoom call that would be Metroid Fusion and that would be the SAX gameplay. The whole entire concept hasn't changed over these 15 years. Really, it was that Samus, this powerful warrior, would be confronted with some overwhelming enemy that would chase her. That was the idea. The 2002 Game Boy Advance game Metroid Fusion was the most recent 2D Metroid game with an original story, and it's also the game that immediately precedes Dread in terms of chronology. SAX is the main antagonist of that game. It's an X-parasite that imitates Samus and uses her own abilities against her. It pursues her relentlessly, but unlike the Emmy in Dread, it was relatively simple to hide from the SAX in Fusion. Metroid Dread's Emmys look significantly more difficult to avoid. It looks like Sakamoto saw MercurySteam's potential for Dread the moment that they pitched the idea of remaking Metroid Fusion. He goes on to explain that the technologies at the time brainstorming Metroid Dread just weren't lining up with the concepts that he had in his head. He elaborates a little bit further, saying that the Switch is our current system, the specs are what they are, and now the system for development that we have in place is also a bit better. So for this excerpt from Polygon, he says, quote, "Actually, with Samus Returns, you know that we met with MercurySteam Entertainment to make that game, and the reason that I actually met with them was in hopes that they'd be able to realize the concepts I had for Metroid Dread, and with their ability and their technical know-how that they'd be able to make what was once a concept an actual reality. The results to Sakamoto have been a success beyond his own expectations. As far as my excitement around Metroid Dread is concerned, it has to do with the ME gameplay. It really is better than I imagined those 15 years ago when I had the idea for this, and seeing that realized has made me really satisfied." With regards to the design or the creation of the ME itself, I wanted to create something that was unsettling for players and also would communicate this kind of unfeelingness that is inherent in something that's robotic, and also the fact that its existence is purely to chase after and catch Samus as well. From this interview, it wouldn't be a stretch to say that Sakamoto wanted to recapture the Dread from the SA-X from Metroid Fusion. He also said something that I found fascinating because it does align with some of the thoughts I've had in the game after beating it, that being that Metroid Dread is a combination of Metroid Fusion and Super Metroid. The article goes further on to say, despite the game's title and its focus on fear-based gameplay, Sakamoto clarified that this isn't a game that is part of the horror genre, although it may have seemed that way. It's actually about Samus encountering fear, but she actually stands against the fear and fights and beats it, and that part of it is important. In other words, even if the player feels stressed out, Samus will be shaking off these jitters and getting down to business. Samus is a professional warrior, Sakamoto emphasized. She's the consummate professional warrior. That's how she's being presented in this game. Those qualities have allowed Samus to endure as a popular character for so many years, he believes. People enjoy becoming this warrior called Samus, experiencing her adventures, becoming her, thinking the way that she does, as well as feeling her humanity through all those things. When he talks about the fear-based gameplay, I agree that fear is the emotion evoked most from an Emmy being alerted by you in your presence. Before reading this interview, I found myself describing the Emmy encounters as being thrillers, much like the movie genre, where much like he said, it's not horror, but more of an adrenaline racing type of feeling. This game might be a bit polarizing to longtime fans, but I personally enjoyed my time playing through Metroid Dread. As soon as it concluded, I needed more. I'm happy to say that a majority of the people and critics felt the same way. IGN gave it a 9 out of 10. Metacritic has an 88% on it right now. While Metroid Dread ends the way that it does, I love the entire story that it told. I was pleasantly surprised that Yoshio Sakamoto confirmed that there will be more Metroid in the future by saying, "Nobody wants the Metroid series to end, and we know that. We ourselves don't want that either," he continued, "but we just want people to know there is some kind of new episode that is waiting in the works, and we want you to look forward with what we do with that next. But there are no specifics now." I am okay with that. I am perfectly okay with the development team taking their time to ensure that their game meets their standards above all else. MercurySteam gives a definite higher level of polish with true respect for the source material in Metroid Dread. Samus' voice work was a highlight for me. The actor that they chose to represent her perfectly suited what I hear when I think of Samus. The story goes in certain directions that don't really feel wrong or fanfiction-y. I'd love to see MercurySteam further get recognized and become a part of the Nintendo family. When I think of MercurySteam, I think of the innovation that came from RetroStudios when Metroid Prime and Donkey Kong Country Returns originally came out. Those were games that took what made them so great and further elaborated on their original ideas. The jump to 3D in Metroid Prime was incredibly polarizing at first, but looking back, Metroid Prime was incredibly ahead of the curve with its first-person camera. On the surface level, you'd say, oh, it's a shooter, but slowly realize it's exactly what defines a Metroidvania, just set in a 3D world. It's incredibly easy to get immersed in that world. I feel with the respect that MercurySteam gives to the games that they develop, I'd love to see their take on a Star Fox game, an F-Zero game, any sort of underrepresented Nintendo series. The division of Nintendo EPD did do work on Star Fox Zero. It would be really interesting to see what MercurySteam and the EPD could come up with to make a new Star Fox game, because I feel that that's something that I feel that MercurySteam would do a lot of justice for a series like Star Fox. This is not meant as a disrespect to RetroStudios and where they're at right now. It sounds like they're doing a lot. It's more just like I love the potential that MercurySteam has showed off in these last couple years, and I'm really excited to see what comes next for them, as this project seems to be a huge success. Metroid Dread seems to be doing incredibly well. I just kind of wrote this because I was excited about the games and wanted to kind of put my thoughts out here. I'd be interested to hear what anybody else has to say about Metroid Dread or MercurySteam and their placement in the games industry. If you like the video, please like it. Subscribe for more content. Really appreciate it. If you have any thoughts, please leave a comment. We can have a conversation about it. I kind of don't know what else to say, so I just would like to say thank you very much if you've made it this far in the video. Please check out all the other content I have on this channel with more to come. Have a great day, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.